Happy International Women's Day. ECH has always invested in people, especially women. 60 years ago, we began providing secure, accessible homes for a handful of women who were war widows, many of who were facing very uncertain futures. What began with our belief in providing affordable housing for older people has since grown into a legacy of standing alongside a community of people. To this day, we support a community of thousands who are still predominantly women to get more out of life. We're also invested on a personal level, offering leadership programs and flexibility for all of our team, particularly benefiting people, often women, who do the heavy lifting with family and loved ones. We count on them, so we count them in. And we do this so everyone can get more out of life.
Life's a journey. Sure, as you get older you might slow down a little, or even take a different path. But the important thing is that each step brings you more of what you want. At ECH, we don't tell you where you should be. We support you wherever you are and wherever you want to go. Get more out of life. Just ask ECH.
There's been a definite shift in the number of females that have worked in this organisation, from applying for apprenticeships and graduate positions and leadership roles. ASC are bringing much more opportunity to the organisation.
I think diversity in any workplace is really important. I think diversity of thought, backgrounds is kind of irreplaceable, and I feel like it's something that's very undervalued. ASC has given us plenty of opportunities to continue on with our training, and which has then helped us develop into our new roles.
I think women definitely bring attention to detail when it comes to work and making stuff look perfect, which means your quality is just overall better for the job. I don't really see a difference between, the men and the women in this industry. We're all one together.
ASC is a great place to work because I have felt very welcomed, supported and accepted here.
I recommend ASC to other women, as ASC gives us great opportunities to have the flexibility around family opportunities.
ASC provide a range of benefits which show their commitment to diversity. They offer 24 weeks paid parental leave, great levels of flexibility and support programs. ASC even contributes to the cost of childcare. We also receive our normal 4 weeks of annual leave plus an additional 2 weeks leave to help us manage our work-life balance.
Today we are celebrating International Women's Day, a day to celebrate the wonderful women around us who make the world a better place. Not just today, but every day. We want to recognise the women at BHP who make our workplace safer, more productive, more inclusive and a better place to work. These are the women who help us produce more copper for electric vehicles, wind turbines and solar panels. These are the women who now represent 36% of our employees at BHP. These are the women who are bringing resources and people together to build a better world. So, from us at BHP, thank you.
Since opening our campus 150 years ago, we have constantly evolved. From our first pioneers in gender equality, we have inspired a new generation of leaders. If we saw closed doors, we'd be first to burst through them. As we have evolved the world around us, helping our students reach new heights. We have given shape to the laws of nature and the nature of our laws. We have helped preserve ancient languages while breaking new ground with the written word. Although we are proud of what we have achieved, we remain resolutely focused on the future. By continually becoming the change we wanted to see, the University of Adelaide has evolved into one of the world's leading universities. Because by making history today, we will build the world we want for tomorrow.
Women's economic empowerment is central to realising women's rights and gender equality. But in every corner of the world, women and girls face significant obstacles to achieving equal participation in the economy.
Pero las capacitaciones, el conocimiento, el autocontrol, el saber empoderarte, el saber llenar los baches, eso no tiene precio. No tiene precio, o sea, eso te queda en la mente y eso es algo que te va a quedar por siempre. Que no vas a ser empoderada siempre gracias a esa ayuda.
Women's economic empowerment cannot be achieved without access to an education, skills training and job opportunities. UN Women works to carve pathways to economic empowerment and financial security for women and girls everywhere through programs like Second Chance Education. Over the last 5 years, the pilot program has achieved significant and life-changing results for women in Australia, Cameroon, Chile, India, Jordan and Mexico.
Hello, welcome to Women's Business Second Chance Hub. Let me take you on a hub tour.
Second Chance Education leverages strategic partnerships and technology to bring high-quality learning opportunities to women from Indigenous, refugee, displaced and low-income groups. Imagine a world where women are not limited by their circumstances, but instead given a second chance to learn, earn and lead.
शिक्षा का महत्व सिर्फ हमारे ज़िंदगी की में नौकरी करना ही नहीं है, कहीं ना कहीं हमारे परिवार को भी संभालना, परिवार को एक सही रास्ते पे लेके चलना, बच्चे को सही गाइडलाइन देना कि बच्चे का भविष्य कैसा बने, ये भी चीज़ें हमारा कहीं ना कहीं शिक्षा से ही जुड़ा हुआ है.
When women are empowered to have their own voice, agency and meaningful participation in economic decision making, everyone benefits.
When I first come here, I was a shell of who I am now. I wouldn't be able to speak to you right now. Like, I was head down. No, that's it, that was the work. The confidence makes me a bit teary, like the woman I've become in the last year or 2 years of being knowing these ladies. The confidence I've got, like now I walk like I'm fine, now I'm good, now I believe in myself, now I'm gonna get my stuff done. My babies are gonna get better. They're gonna do better than me because I'm better for it now.
This International Women's Day, we're inviting you to counter invest in women, accelerate progress. By donating today, you'll be supporting UN Women programs to enable women across the globe to create a better future for their families, their communities and their own futures. If we are ever to break the cycle of inequality, we must invest in women. Because when you count her in, everyone wins. Women's economic empowerment is central to realising women's rights and gender equality. But in every corner of the world, women and girls face significant obstacles to achieving equal participation in the economy.
Pero las capacitaciones, el conocimiento, el autocontrol, el saber empoderarte, el saber llenar los baches, eso no tiene precio. No tiene precio, o sea, eso te queda en la mente y eso es algo que te va a quedar por siempre. Que no vas a ser empoderada siempre gracias a esa ayuda.
Women's economic empowerment cannot be achieved without access to an education, skills training and job opportunities. UN Women works to carve pathways to economic empowerment and financial security for women and girls everywhere through programs like Second Chance Education. Over the last 5 years, the pilot program has achieved significant and life-changing results for women in Australia, Cameroon, Chile, India, Jordan and Mexico.
Hello, welcome to Women's Business Second Chance Hub. Let me take you on a hub tour.
Second Chance Education leverages strategic partnerships and technology to bring high-quality learning opportunities to women from Indigenous, refugee, displaced and low-income groups. Imagine a world where women are not limited by their circumstances, but instead given a second chance to learn, earn and lead.
शिक्षा का महत्व सिर्फ हमारे ज़िंदगी की में नौकरी करना ही नहीं है, कहीं ना कहीं हमारे परिवार को भी संभालना, परिवार को एक सही रास्ते पे लेके चलना, बच्चे को सही गाइडलाइन देना कि बच्चे का भविष्य कैसा बने, ये भी चीज़ें हमारा कहीं ना कहीं शिक्षा से ही जुड़ा हुआ है.
When women are empowered to have their own voice, agency and meaningful participation in economic decision making, everyone benefits.
When I first come here, I was a shell of who I am now. I wouldn't be able to speak to you right now. Like, I was head down. No, that's it, that was the work. The confidence makes me a bit teary, like the woman I've become in the last year or 2 years of being knowing these ladies. The confidence I've got, like now I walk like I'm fine, now I'm good, now I believe in myself, now I'm gonna get my stuff done. My babies are gonna get better. They're gonna do better than me because I'm better for it now.
This International Women's Day, we're inviting you to counter invest in women, accelerate progress. By donating today, you'll be supporting UN Women programs to enable women across the globe to create a better future for their families, their communities and their own futures. If we are ever to break the cycle of inequality, we must invest in women. Because when you count her in, everyone wins.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could ask you to please make your way for your tables and to be upstanding for the arrival of the official party. Thank you. Please be seated. And welcome everybody to Adelaide's International Women's Day breakfast for 2024. My name is Sonya Feldhoff from ABC Radio Adelaide, and it's my great pleasure to be with you another year to host this wonderful breakfast. How many of you are regular attendees? Oh, you're quiet today. That's unusual. For all of you who've been here on a regular basis, and for those of you who are here for the first time, we welcome you wholeheartedly on this International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day, because today, for the first time in a long time, we're actually marking this breakfast on the actual day that International Women's Day falls, which is a wonderful thing to do. And in this world of great unrest, let's take a moment to think how lucky we are to be able to pause for a moment to celebrate an important day like this, because not everyone in the world can do that. Now, this is the 33rd year of the Adelaide International Women's Day breakfast here in Australia, and the largest annual women's event in Adelaide. If you're sitting there in your chair at the moment, you're doing it with 3,079 other people in this room. It's a marvellous achievement, so congratulations. And I might take a moment to also welcome the many of you who are online and in our regional areas today, because on top of that 3,080 people at the breakfast here itself, we have many more listening in online. This is Penny Wong's 23rd year of hosting this very important breakfast, so congratulations, Senator Wong. This year's theme is Count Her In, Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. And it's based on the priority theme for the United Nations 68th Commission on the Status of Women. Count Her In will examine the pathways to greater economic inclusion for women and girls everywhere. And proceeds from today's event will go to the UN Women Australia. Now, if you are going to be taking photos today, and I've seen lots of people already doing that, we encourage you to do so. Please, when you're posting those, can you include the hashtags Count Her In and IWD 2024. Before we get into the actual formalities, can I ask you to please turn off your mobile phones at this point? If you do need to use the bathrooms, please head out the doors that you came in, and then to the left as you head out the door is where those bathrooms will be. And they are also the exit doors in case of an emergency. Unlikely, but never know. It's good to have that knowledge. All right, if I could welcome to the stage right now Elaine Maguias. She is here to welcome all of you to our breakfast on behalf of the Ghana people. Thanks, Elaine. It's a long walk up here, I can tell you.
Namani. Manina Pudni. Welcomes to Country, to Yata, has held great significance for all Aboriginal peoples across Australia and her islands long before strangers reached our shores. Conducting a welcome is to ask our ancestors to watch over visitors to keep them safe so that they may return safely to their own country. To wait to be acknowledged onto Country, to Yata, is a sign of respect and acknowledgement of her Miuna, people, place and belonging. Traditional Ghana country lays from Crystal Brook in the north, down along the coast and out into Gulf St Vincent, down to Cape Jervis in the south, and back up along the Adelaide Hills in the east, returning to Crystal Brook. At the heart of Country lays Tandanyanga, place of the red kangaroo dreaming, significant traditional place of conferences, ceremonies, trade and law for Ghana and visitors. Welcoming visitors onto Country, Yata, is much more than words, song or dance. It is a time to speak to ancestors, to let them know that this visitor has been granted permission to come onto Country, Yata, that we have trust in them and trust that they will respect Country, Yata, people, Miuna and law. Country, Yata, is everything for Aboriginal people. She is our mother, our family, our life, our connection to who we are, to where we belong, and to where we come from. Our cultural stories that lay across country, Yarta, to remind us of our responsibilities to protect and respect and nurture her waterways, her oceans and reefs, hills, trees, plants, the cliffs and soil, and her animals and birds. Kaurna people, no country, Yarta, has a heartbeat that connects us to her. Our ancestors taught us to listen to her and to respect her. From the past and into the future, we remember the ways of our grandmothers and grandfathers in caring for country, Yarta. My ancestors have welcomed people onto country, Yarta, for more than 2,600 generations, not simply 65,000 years. I choose to talk in generations because this is my family, and my family have walked this country for 2,600 generations. Now my time has come to practice the ancient ways of the old people to ensure country and ancestors know that you have been welcomed. But firstly, most importantly, I acknowledge and pay my respects to Aboriginal elders past and present, to their dedication to protect country, culture and history, and to their pain. I also extend my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here with us today and watching via technology. Ngā mani. Ngā Ngāri Elaine Munato Magais, Ngā Ghana Naranga Nyanki, Marawachanga Ghana Miuna, Ngā Wangani Mani Ngā Budni Ghana Yatana, Nature Yungana Dalia, Nature Yukana Dalia, Pudni Adluwado. Hello, it's good you all came. My name is Elaine Munato Magais. Munato is my birth order name. I am fourth born. On behalf of the Kaurna people, I welcome you all today to Kaurna country. May we walk together in unity. Nachalia, thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. I'd like to take a moment to welcome some of our VIPs to today's event. Welcome to Senator the Honourable Simon Birmingham, Leader of the Opposition in the Senate, the Honourable Linda Burney MP, Minister for Indigenous Australians, the Honourable Susan Ley MP, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Peter Malinauskas MP, the Premier of South Australia, and Jack Batty MP, representing the Honourable David Spears MP, Leader of the Opposition. Professor Peter Hoy, AC, Vice-Chancellor and President of the University of Adelaide, Professor David Lloyd, Vice-Chancellor and President, University of South Australia, Professor Romy Lawson, Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Students at Flinders University, the ABC Chair, Kim Williams, second day in the job, and he's here, Adriana Ban, UN Women Australia Representative, Miss Stephanie Copus-Campbell AM, Ambassador for Gender Equality, and Her Excellency, Ms. Beate Gretzky, the Ambassador of Germany. Thank you all for joining us, and each and every one of you for making the effort to be with us today. I really think this is always a highlight for lots of us who come here today, is that also amongst us we have representatives from 33 high schools, as well as several more streaming online. It's a marvellous part of this breakfast that we welcome the young women of the future into our midst. Not just young women, I saw a lot of young student boys as well. We'd like a special shout out to the students from Riverton High School, from Nuriutpa in the Barossa Valley, who have come to be our guests at our Crowley's Southcott table. Welcome to you all, and thank you for being here today. Now, this wonderful community event would not be possible, of course, without the support of our local partners, sponsors and supporters. And I'm going to acknowledge them now, and it's a long list. Please bear with me because it is a wonderful problem to have to acknowledge so much generosity. But let's start it. Our diamond sponsors, the University of Adelaide, ASC, BHP and ECH. Our gold sponsors, the University of South Australia, SA Power Networks, Flinders University, Catholic Education South Australia. Our silver sponsors, Catherine House and Zitzler. Our bronze sponsors, Nova Systems, Mott MacDonald, Hoban Recruitment, United Nations Association of Australia, SA Division, Haig's Chocolates, and our supporters, Jenny Groom Photography, Z Form Displays, Mayfair Hotel. Our media partner today is ABC Radio Adelaide, and our venue partner is the Adelaide Convention Centre. Now, we'd also like to thank the companies and organisations that have purchased corporate tables at today's breakfast. Women in Innovation, SAR ODL, SA Secondary Principals Association, Essential Services Commission of SA, yeah, make some noise if you want, feel free to, Thomson Gear, WSP Australia Proprietary Limited, SDA, Renewal SA, Department of Primary Industries and Regions SA, University Senior College at Adelaide University, Loriqua Wealth and Advisory, Radiology SA, MPM Group, Office of the Commissioner for Public Sector Employment, Department of Human Services, MTP Connect, Department for Trade and Investment, RSL Care SA, Educators SA, Genesis Care, Minister Nat Cook, Senator Hanson Young, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade South Australia State Office, South Australia Police, SA Leaders for Gender Equity, Rest Haven Incorporated, Australian Space Agency and the South Australian Primary Principals Association. There we go. You know which places are the good ones to work, the noisy ones, yeah? Thank you all for your support and involvement in the Adelaide IWD breakfast. This cannot happen without your generosity. Okay, now, how can you go home with something today? Well, if you look on your table at the moment, you will see a raffle QR code. Personally, I didn't know what a QR code was before 2020 and COVID. Now they're everywhere. But if you want to use that QR code to purchase your tickets, you can win fantastic prizes. There should be a list of the wonderful prizes that are there. Now, you don't have a lot of time to buy the tickets, so I don't think any of our speakers today will mind you, walking and chewing gum at the same time, buying raffle tickets as you listen. We know you can do it. $5 a ticket, and the raffle will remain open until 10 a.m. Adelaide time, for those of you listening online, in case that's an issue in delay. And the raffle will be drawn after 11 a.m. today. And if you are lucky enough to be a winner, you will be contacted directly. So if you don't hear anything, you didn't win. Now, what you can take home without even having to fork over $5 is some complimentary items on your table, and they are a purple IWD ribbon. If you haven't already got it on, I encourage you and urge you to put it on right now, and a Haig's chocolate. And if you're not taking that home, my seat is right over there. Feel free to pile them up. You can also donate directly to UN Women Australia today, so if you wish to make a monthly gift to UN Women Australia, you can do so via their website at unwomen.org.au. All right, it's time to hear from our host today. The Honourable Penny Wong is Australia's Minister for Foreign Affairs, and she has been a long-time host of the International Women's Day breakfast. In fact, this year it is for her 22nd consecutive year. Penny Wong grew up in Adelaide after moving here from Malaysia when she was 8. Throughout her career, she's been a fierce advocate for equality, in particular LGBTQIA+ and women's rights. As well as serving as a Labor Senator, Penny has been Minister for Climate Change and Water, and Minister for Finance and Deregulation. She is now Leader of the Government in the Senate and the Minister for Foreign Affairs. And many of you who've been here repeatedly will know that CV quite well because we talk about it each year. What I can add this year is that as of Wednesday this week, just in time for International Women's Day, she is now also Australia's longest serving female Cabinet Minister. probably no surprise that she's been consistently named Australia's most trusted politician, and maybe weirdly, but okay, the politician people would most trust to babysit their kids. I'm not sure there's a lot of time in her schedule to babysit kids, but please welcome Senator Penny Wong.
Thanks very much, Sonya. I have to confess that the thing I'm most proud of is the babysitting kids cred. That made me very happy. Can I begin also by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today, the Kaurna people, paying my respects to elders, past, present and emerging. Thank you, Elaine, for your warm welcome. And if I may, acknowledge Rosemary Wanganeen, who usually gives our welcome to country but is still healing after the voice referendum. I want to acknowledge we have many special guests here today. I appreciate the attendance from so many. I won't repeat the full list of acknowledgements. There's a saying in the Pacific which is all protocols observed, so I might use that, but I will mention some. I want to acknowledge my federal parliamentary colleagues, including Linda Burney and Amanda Rishworth. Thank you for being here. I want to acknowledge representatives of the opposition, including my colleague Simon Birmingham and also Susan Lee. I want to acknowledge Peter, the South Australian Premier, and ministers and state MPs, and of course Annabel Crabb. My children were very excited to hear from you. Thank you to our generous sponsors and to all of you for making today special. I have in my notes that this is actually the 22nd IWD breakfast I've hosted here. Sonya says the 23rd, but you know, it's in that order. And we have a record 3,000 people among us, including students from 33 schools, many more joining us online, including at satellite events from Kangaroo Island, Mount Gambier and Norwood. So welcome to everybody, and particularly all the kids online. There are a number of reasons why this breakfast keeps growing. One of them is Meredith in my office, who does a marvellous job organising all of this. So thank you, Meredith, and thank you to the committee led ably by Alexis Mackay. We really appreciate your work. We've also been bestowed a largesse of brilliant speakers, including Annabel today. But you know, the biggest reason this breakfast keeps growing is because we share a hunger to acknowledge women's struggle, to celebrate women's success and to honour those women who have shown us the way. As your Foreign Minister, I'm deeply conscious of the hardship women experience around the world, disproportionately because of gender. Higher rates of poverty and disadvantage, the lack of legal and political rights, the impact of conflict and war on women and girls, particularly when sexual violence becomes a weapon of war. And I am determined to ensure Australia's contribution to the world is a contribution which continues to advance the rights and aspirations of women and girls. This includes insisting that 80% of our international development investments include a focus on gender equality. It includes ensuring we have an ambassador for gender equality who is here with us today, Ambassador Copus Campbell. This includes expanding parental and at home we are working to improve opportunities for Australian women, including expanding paid parental leave to 6 months by 2026. So thank you, Katie Gallagher and Amanda Rishworth, for spearheading that. And paying superannuation on government PPL payments from 1 July next year. Again, thank you, Katie and Amanda. Publishing the pay gaps of Australia's bigger employers, unlike some of those on the opposite benches. I don't believe that is useless data. I think that is one of the ways in which we can try and close the gap. There is much to say, my friends, about the big picture for women in Australia and around the world. And you've heard me at previous breakfasts go through some of the statistics which impel us to continue to work here at home and also internationally. But today I want to focus more on some of the women in our lives who have shown us the way. Women on the national and global stage who inspire us, who have inspired us, pioneering in new fields of endeavour, expanding the reach of equality and our imaginations. And women in our own lives who model what and who we can be. In this past year, we've lost some of the women who were role models for me and for many others. Loicha O'Donoghue, Peter Murphy and Linda White. Peter Murphy and Linda White were two Labor colleagues who dedicated their lives to advocating for working people and were champions for women. Peter would have been one of the greats with her uncommon ability to connect with people. And so too Linda White, who achieved so much for working Australians before she even made it into Parliament. Later today, Dr. Luicha O'Donoghue will be farewelled here in Adelaide. I had the honour of working with Luicha on Women for WIC, and she shared stories of her life with grace and generosity that few of us would have conjured if faced with the same circumstances. Luicha did not know that was the name her mother had given her until she was in her 30s. She had a chance encounter in Coober Pedy with an aunt and uncle who saw her family resemblance and who exclaimed, "That's Lily's girl." Following that encounter, Luicha's mother waited for days by the side of the road in the Oodnadatta dust, waiting for her daughter to come home. And when she did, after 30 years apart, they discovered they had no language in common, but they could only speak to each other through their eyes, because Luicha had been stolen from her mother when she was just 2 years old. Raised by missionaries who underfed her, tolerated only the English language, told her she would amount to nothing and forbade any discussion of her family. In those formative years, Luicha would ask herself, "Where is my mother? Why doesn't she come for me? Doesn't she love me?" And when they finally met again 30 years later, Luicha said, "It's far too emotional to talk about." Luicha O'Donoghue confounded a lifetime of prejudiced expectations. The first Aboriginal nurse at the Royal Adelaide, a leader in Aboriginal legal and land rights movements and head of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission. She negotiated groundbreaking legislation with the Keating government. She became the first Aboriginal Australian to address the United Nations General Assembly, and she played an instrumental role in the national apology to stolen generations, which I hope brought some catharsis. Dr. Luicha O'Donoghue was an icon and a role model for so many of us, and especially for First Nations women around Australia, for what could be achieved and also the way to achieve it. But she could never regain a childhood with a singular and profound love of her own mother. Many of you are here with your mother or your daughter. My mother would usually be with us at this breakfast, but today she cannot be. And as I pay tribute to great women who have inspired and shaped me, there is none more than Jane Chapman. Jane married my father, a Malaysian man, at a time when the White Australia policy was still in place. She is a woman of arresting, penetrating intellect, of mischievous wit, of deep compassion and principle, and she gives expression to her compassion through unsurpassed courage and determination for justice, qualities that have steeled me through all of my life's challenges. Mum is someone whose love is always present and always felt as a mother. She's watching today, and I want to say to her that through your work, your choices, your courage and your deeds, Mum, you showed me a path, and that my destiny was mine to shape. Thank you. Friends, sisters, each of you will have women in your life, maybe some at your table, who have shown you a path. And each of you have a role in helping the women and girls who may be looking to you to show a path. So please do so. That is part of the lesson and the learning of this breakfast. And I conclude my remarks today by introducing to you one more woman who has played that role for me and for so many others. My friend and my colleague, Linda Burney. We sit together at the Cabinet table, where she is the Minister for Indigenous Australians. Linda advocates with an encyclopedic mind, with deep insights and a gentle but deeply powerful voice. I learned a long time ago that when Linda speaks, we should listen, and we should listen with respect. It is my great pleasure that we have the opportunity to hear from her today. Linda Burney, thank you all.
Oh, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Penny, for that really special introduction. Balam Ambul, Gandhi Yindamara Nyadju, Yurabang Marang. I say in the language of my people, the Wiradjuri people, I pay respect to the Ghana and I honour their custodianship and care for country. And thank you so much, Elaine, for your acknowledgement and welcome today and for reminding us of the generational nature of the way in which we should see the truth of this country. Thank you so very much. Today is International Women's Day, and I really want to say to each and every one of you, value your story, value your life, and it is spectacular in every single way. We are absolutely a fantastic country, and we are having this breakfast of over 3,000 people amongst fabulous women to celebrate International Women's Day. Can I thank you, Penny, who brings you all together. It's pretty spectacular and famous, this breakfast is, to see 3,000 people here in Adelaide. To my parliamentary colleagues and also to the Premier, I say a very good morning, very, very good morning to you. And to you, Annabel, I can't wait to hear what you've got to say. I've known you for a very long time, and I'm very honoured to be here as you're providing the address this morning. It is a great way to be able to honour people in this amazing state of South Australia, but also to honour women right across this country. I wanted to say a few things, as Penny did, about Lowitja O'Donoghue, and I'll talk about that now. I actually knew Lowitja, and I worked with her on the Aboriginal Council of Reconciliation in the late 90s. In her presence, you felt her graciousness, you also felt her kindness, and I can tell you she could be stern, but that was one of her great attributes as well. And I have to say that going to her state funeral this afternoon is going to be a very special event, and I know that many of you will be there as well. She was an astounding woman. As Penny has said, as Penny has spoken about her life, the fact that she came from such an adversity and was able to lift this country up in the way that she did was something that we can all take some counsel from. This year's theme of International Women's Day, Counter in, Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress, sounds like pretty common sense to me. But empowering women, including First Nations women, is really so very important. And it is the core of myself, and I know many of you in this room. You know, change is hard, change is tough, and change takes time. And in my experience, change doesn't come with sweeping pieces of legislation, with sweeping grand gestures. It usually comes from the small and important efforts of individuals, and that is the power that you all have. I know First Nations women are vital to the strength and well-being of First Nations communities, First Nations families, and to this country. And that's part of what we'll be celebrating this afternoon at Lowitja's Memorial. When families are strong, communities are strong. And I just wanted to say this. When we all got up this morning, we took a shower, we had a glass of water, we had a cup of tea, we turned on a tap and got clean, drinkable water. And for so many women in this country, that is not the reality. There is not safe drinking water to wash your children with, and to make a cup of tea and get ready for the day. And I think it's important at breakfasts like this to remind ourselves that the things that we have in life is not the experience of many First Nations women across this state and across this country. Can I just finish up by saying these things? We are going to honour Loacha O'Donoghue this afternoon, but I also wanted to just take a moment to recognise another spectacular First Nations woman. Her name is, she's the outgoing Social Justice Commissioner. She's a Banaba woman, and her name is June Oscar. She has spent 5 years championing the role of women in society, and in particular, groundbreaking work. And the great thing is, everyone, is that she is being replaced by another First Nations woman called Katie Kiss from Queensland, and that's just really spectacular. 2 social justice commissioners, both women, and in a row, and that's something very, very good for this country. Can I just finish up by saying something very, very personal? It seems to me that women and our fellow travellers play a very special place in society. And I say to you as women and men in this room, value your own story. Value your own story because it is important. It makes up the mosaic of this country, and you are a part of that. To make change, to create pathways for future generations is what our job is. I always say to young people, you are resting on the shoulders of others, and then suddenly you realise that it's your shoulders as well. So remember that, everyone, that you are providing shoulders for other people to rest on, and that is something that is extraordinarily powerful. Can I say Happy International Women's Day? Thank you for listening to me. Remember that there are women in this country that can't have a shower safely in the morning. Remember that your story is important, and remember that you provide the shoulders for others to rest on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Burney. Now, how are you going with those raffle tickets? Keep going. You've got till 10 a.m, but I understand they are selling fairly quickly, so make sure you get in there and purchase yours. They will be on sale till 10 a.m. today. All right, we are going to hear next from our speaker today. This year we welcome Annabel Crabb to join us in celebrating International Women's Day. Now, Annabel is one of Australia's most beloved journalists. She's an ABC writer and presenter who's covered Australian politics for some 20 years, but also is nationally well known for her insightful and humorous analysis on gender and current affairs. She is the creator and presenter of Misrepresented and of the long-running political interview series Kitchen Cabinet. She wrote and presented the groundbreaking documentary series on life inside Australia's Parliament House called The House with Annabel Crabb. She also hosts ABC's popular history and food series, Back in Time for Dinner. And a primary teacher only told me recently that show is providing a great resource for teaching Australian history in her primary school. So it's doing lots, not just entertaining. She is a regular face on ABC TV's election night and budget broadcasts and has a long history of appearances on ABC's Insiders program. Her published work, that ranges from The Wife Drought, a 2015 bestseller on women and work, to the cookbooks she co-writes with childhood friend Wendy Sharp. And Annabel has also won a Walkley Award for her biographical work, Stop at Nothing, The Life and Adventures of Malcolm Turnbull. With friend and colleague Lee Sales, Annabel hosts the top-rating podcast Chat 10 Looks 3, and they've co-written their first book together, Well, Hello. She's also in Adelaide with her show, her Fringe show, The Grilling Season, so you can still see that next weekend before Fringe finishes. And she's the mother of 3 children. She's bringing up 3 independent children, one of whom I think you'll all agree is more Annabel Crabb than Annabel Crabb is. Please welcome journalist, commentator, celebrated baker and mother of 3, Annabel Crabb.
Thank you very much, Sonya, for that unnecessarily lengthy introduction, and it's a pleasure to be back home on Kaurna land. Thank you very much, Minister Wong, for the invitation to speak today at what I belatedly discover is kind of like the Super Bowl of International Women's Day events. Not that I at any point took the invitation lightly, let me clarify with haste. No full-time employee of any public agency, even one at a mutually acknowledged sword's length like the ABC, ever accepts an invitation with complete equanimity from the possessor of the most chilling single raised eyebrow in the history of Senate estimates. But to find subsequently that the event would involve this many people and would feature the Honourable Linda Burney, a speaker with whom I immediately cravenly asked to switch speaking time allotments, who is here to commemorate the return to the earth of this place, one of the most significant women ever to be born to it, Dr. Lucia O'Donoghue. Well, let me simply say, A, that it's an honour to be here, and B, many, many hours of live broadcasting have taught me that audiences can detect panic very easily. And thus I have no intention of revealing just how open-pored my own is at this exact moment. I note with a further sick lurch of horror that my brand new big boss, Kim Williams, new chairman of the ABC, is also in the room. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. One of the least discussed advantages of imposter syndrome, however, and women don't discuss imposter syndrome that much because we're ashamed of it, and men don't discuss it that much because they can't understand how it can be a thing, is that it does save you through terror from complacency, of which more later. But I must, as a South Australian, begin on a parochial note. Here we are on North Terrace, which has only, for perspective, existed for the tiniest fragment of this landmass's history of human population. Nonetheless, precociously early in its life as a roadway, just 130 years ago, North Terrace provided the street address for a vote that made the women of this state the first women on the planet who would henceforth be counted not only as voters on the electoral roll, but on the ballot as candidates. Driven by some very determined women and given the jolt of electoral consequence by a petition of electors, men and women, in 1894, featuring more than 11,000 signatures. Among those signatures, Miss Carolyn Chapman, a teacher of girls at the Halifax Street Seminary. And if I may also address the minister's mother, Jane Chapman, she was your father's sister, making her, I think, Minister, your great aunt. Individuals can make a difference. So, with apologies to our guests from other states here today, it's very hard to commence a speech in my hometown on the topic of counting her in without mentioning that we kind of invented it. Along with, of course, the stump jump plough, the Stobie pole, and the female foreign minister. the last of which seems to have caught on to an alarming extent. I'll stop in a moment, but Julia Gillard, Julie Bishop, Natasha Stott-Despoja, three of the most senior women ever to serve in our national parliament, all South Australians, all of whom, may I observe, have in their post-parliamentary careers spent minimal time on re-prosecuting old feuds and maximum time being useful internationally and domestically. And I mention that in an entirely gender-neutral way. Now, as the Minister observed, count her in is a principle of great and obvious promise for the future of this planet. We know, for instance, that educating girls is one of the most powerful things we can do to address poverty and climate change. We know, thanks to Australia's unique real-time gender data set collected over more than a decade by the Workplace Gender Equality Agency, that including more women in executive leadership generates greater profit results for large private sector businesses. That is not a hypothesis anymore, thanks to world-first economic analysis that was enabled by this Australian data. This is a proven fact now, and this is the value of counting stuff. And if there's one shift that's happened in the last decade or two that really thrills me, it's the growing recognition, backed by research, that diversity isn't something you do because it's the nice thing to do, or the fair thing to do, or because angry Jenny from the Women's Committee keeps yelling at you in the lift. Smart organisations and smart leaders are now cottoning on to the fact that having leadership teams who all look the same and have the same life experiences and went to the same schools and played against each other on footy teams, and whose definition of giving 100% to the job involves being available 24/7 because they have a highly competent spouse picking up everything at home in case of emergency, that is an extremely risky way of doing business. Not risky in the sense of because you'll get cancelled if your annual report looks like a sausage fest. Not in that sense, not only in that sense, but risky because diverse groups of people make better decisions. And if your decisions are made or advised by homogeneous groups of people, chances are you will make some extremely bad decisions. I have examples of this from politics, but I only have 20 minutes, so I shall proceed. That is the risk. It's a real risk. It's a quantifiable risk. When you count people out, what are you missing? Today we've heard reflections on the life of Lowitja O'Donoghue, born in this state in 1932. She was not counted, not even in the most basic sense, in that the date of her birth was not recorded. Although she, of course, generically was deemed to be covered by the Aborigines Training of Children Act of 1923. Nobody counted that girl in. She's counted now. Of course she is, because her resilience and determination and courage changed a system that was not designed to include her or to consult her. Minister Burney, the first Indigenous woman to serve in the House of Representatives and in the federal cabinet, also grew up without either parent and, if I may, Minister, has known great hardship at various points in her life, and somehow has managed to turn pain and disappointment not into bitterness or anger, but into strength and patience. And when I periodically hear the question, are women really tough enough for politics? Sometimes I think of you, Minister Burney. I know our host today, Penny Wong, doesn't love to be the centre of attention, but I enjoy provoking her as far as is personally survivable, so here goes. It's 30 years ago now that a young Penny Wong's strategic efforts to secure her party's commitment to pre-selection quotas for women in winnable seats here in South Australia turned into a national undertaking at the 1994 Labor National Conference. Her contribution since, not only as a senator and leader, but to the broadening of our national search terms that we enter when we ask what leaders look like, has been prodigious. Like Dr. O'Donoghue, like Minister Burney, our host has at very few points in her life enjoyed the ability to disappear, to walk into an environment, be it primary school or university or court or parliament, and have the security, the comfort of thinking, this place is full of people exactly like me. I will be fine. Now, this feeling is a privilege, of course, but it's rarely listed with the more obvious varieties. This is because it's a chimeric sort of privilege, which is to say it's unimaginable to those who've never had it, and at the same time, completely invisible to those who've had it all their lives. And over 25 years reporting politics, I've noticed this disparity when new MPs and senators approach Parliament House on day one. Women with their mouths shut and their periscopes up, working out what the rules are, where the banana skins are, when are the formal meetings, and when are the ones and where do they happen where just a few people quietly make the actual decisions. Who can you trust? Where are the toilets? If I need to cry in one, which is the most soundproof? They are that way because history has not counted women in from the beginning of our political system. Think about the great Nancy Butfield in 1955, because it was 1955 before this state first sent a woman to the federal parliament. Nancy Butfield, an incredible woman, one of many, many Liberal women who went to the parliament in those early years. She was also the first woman to drink at the parliamentary bar. So you know that she was not a woman who hesitated to count herself in. These women don't get invited to Parliament. They get themselves in there under their own steam. In the case of the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party, Susan Lee, who's here today, she flew herself there. And we should have more of that. Men, however, when I see them arrive in the Parliament for the first time, are more likely to be unable to wait for their first press conference. Lucky you! I'm here! These are generalisations, of course, but when I interviewed political women for the ABC series Misrepresented a few years back, I asked them to describe what it was like to be the only female in a room full of men, because most of them had had that experience routinely over the years. And what stunned me was the way that, without prompting from me, they responded with the same story, which is what happens when you're the only woman in a meeting and you say something and nobody responds and you think, oh my God, did I just say something incredibly stupid? And then sometime later, a guy makes the same observation or suggestion and suddenly everybody thinks it's a great idea. And anyway, from Bronwyn Bishop to Sarah Hanson-Young, they told the story in such identical terms, more than a dozen of them, that we were able to splice these accounts all together quite seamlessly into one television sequence. And after the series went to air, I spoke with some male MPs who were amazed to hear of such a phenomenon. And why would they have noticed? Because the confidence that you'll be heard when you speak doesn't sound like something you'd even consider a privilege until you've had a go at not being heard. Like the confidence that if you're ambitious, people will see that as a good thing. Another field in which women often proceed with justifiable caution. Now, the King James Bible records Jesus as saying, "Unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall much be required." And this sentiment has been rephrased significantly over the years, usually more gender neutrally, of course, and I've only chosen this one because it's more beautiful, and also avoids the ending of a sentence with a preposition, which is almost universal among the modern adaptations. And, well, we've already had quite enough of that with "count her in." I mean, apologies, UN women, I love the theme, I love your work, but there is only a certain amount with which, in a 20-minute speech, a grammar snob is prepared to put. Now, this sentiment that a person who has been blessed with great good fortune has an obligation to pay it forward through good works or public service is invoked regularly in fine speeches given by benefactors opening new hospital wings, or the humble rhetoric heralding the arrival of a new squillionaire in the Parliament. The whiff of noblesse oblige is trickier to eliminate from the sentiment than cigar smoke from a gentleman's club. But I think there's a deeper requirement upon those to whom much has been given, whether it be in the form of an affluent life, or a great education, or a straightforward path into politics, or a media megaphone, or the other more nebulous forms of privilege I mentioned earlier. And that is to shut up for a minute, every now and again, and listen, truly listen, to the experiences of those to whom less has been given, or have led a different life from yours. Not because you feel guilty, not because you're woke, not because you want to identify the exact point at which you personally worked harder or made a better decision and that's why you're doing okay and they aren't, but because the whole reason humans evolved language was to create shortcuts for each other, to learn stuff from each other. And why? Well, in the earliest days of human communication, sharing information was a matter of survival. Don't eat that, mate, it'll kill you. And then it moved to innovation. Hey, I found out how to make this hot red stuff. You've got to be very careful with it, but it makes meat taste a lot better. And on this continent, as far back as tens of thousands of years, it evolved into magical forms of expression. Songs that could help you navigate to distant places you'd never seen. Stories containing knowledge so powerful they could be dangerous. And language remains the best antidote we have for ignorance. Wow, that was a great line until I ruined it. Language remains the best antidote we have for ignorance. And ignorance of other lives, of other cultures, other motivations, other injuries or priorities is usually, if you dig all the way back, somewhere near the heart of just about every human hatred or conflict. Sometimes the ignorance is unilateral, sometimes mutual, sometimes willful, sometimes careless. Add defensiveness, stubbornness, then violence, then revenge, and the rallying behind various slogans and banners. This is how ignorance calcifies over generations into something else, something grisly and intractable. And the best way to avoid this escalation, which, let's face it, thanks to the speed of modern mass communication, can happen over the time it makes to make a cup of tea, is to shut up and listen for a bit. Ideally, to people who can tell you things you don't already know, or you don't even know that you don't already know. And before you know it, you're making better decisions because you're working with a wider search field of expertise, because diverse groups of people make better decisions. When you count others in, you get more competent. Dare I say it? You accumulate, as a group, merit. Now, we're curiously addicted still to the idea of merit as an individual proposition, that we just need to find the best person to be the candidate, be the CEO, be Prime Minister, be the love of our lives, or whatever. As if any of those positions has a straightforward set of KPIs. As if there exists anywhere one person who aces them all. In the case of the Prime Ministership, well, we're always disappointed because the whole concept of democracy is that a group of people is delegated to get together on behalf of a vast population and come up with a compromise that leaves everyone at least a tiny bit deflated. That's why we invented the Senate, to annoy everyone. And until some brain box comes up with a good model for a really nice dictator, that's what we've got. And the point of counting her in isn't just the extension of this delusionally narrow individual recruitment drive to a few more women. It's to understand that in our search for Superman over the years, we have been using the wrong search terms. Now, merit is a word that gets thrown around a lot in our ongoing discussion about how to address the gender imbalance at the northern end of many large organisations in this country, not least the Parliament. Some parties that vociferously oppose gender quotas because of the holy principle of appointments being merit-based will, at the very same time, promote complete dunderplunkins to the front bench because they have to absolutely have someone from the right faction or the left or this state or that. If you're a coalition Prime Minister, there is absolutely a quota for National Party ministers, and your Deputy Prime Minister will be from the National Party. Why? Because the National Party just happens again and again to manufacture the most meritorious 2 ICs available to this vast brown land? No, because diverse groups of people make better decisions. I mean, I don't want to harp on or anything. Okay, maybe I will. The entire Senate is a quota system. I mean, we know that, don't we? We have the same number of Tasmanian senators and New South Wales senators. Not because, despite the massive population difference, not because the founding fathers thought Tasmanians were especially meritorious, but because they thought it was worth preserving a diversity of voices in the upper house. And that is why, if you want to run for the Senate, you'll need about 700,000 votes in New South Wales, but only about 50,000 in Tasmania. Oddly enough, quotas only seem to become upsetting or an offence to the principle of merit once they're proposed with respect to gender. And let's be brutally honest, what is merit in politics anyway? It's not, and I'm trying to be as nice about this as I can, a principle to which any claim of objectivity can adhere given the wild fluctuations of quality we've observed in the chaps recruited under its banner to date. As Amanda Vanstone, another great South Australian, said in 2002 on the centenary of the Federal Suffrage Act, which adopted South Australia's extension of the franchise to women, but at the last minute, due to the intervention of a senator from WA, removed Indigenous women and men from the deal, forever marring an otherwise significant advance. Senator Vanstone said in 2002, "Each of us should think of the least useful MP we possibly can. Let me assure you of something, that when you get a woman that ineffective, that's when we'll have real equality." Are we there yet, Amanda? Well, no, we're not. And despite the disparity in representation between the two major parties, there isn't room for smugness in the ALP either until there is 50-50 representation in the membership of factional groups and leaders of interest and of influence. And not when, in this week alone, A pre-selection for the safe seat of a retiring Prime Minister was won, not by a female candidate, as the departing incumbent said he'd prefer, as pretty much did everybody, in warm and general terms, but instead by the meritorious candidate, a guy who doesn't live in the electorate and is indeed best known in politics for losing, with a swing of around 7%, the previous seat for which he was pre-selected last election, which had, coincidentally, belonged to another former Prime Minister and in which he also didn't live. I am not saying that this chap does not have many skills. I'm just fascinated by the elasticity that can be applied to the concept of merit. Counting her in means dispensing with that old chestnut too, about women being put off by the cut and thrust of politics or the robust contest of ideas, which behind the scenes often means men using the language of weakness when they talk about women. She's not up to it. She's being pushed around by her department. I'm just not sure she's got the balls required for leadership. A male politician actually said that to me once, and in his defence, when I burst into hysterical laughter, he did have the grace to be embarrassed. But whenever I hear these guys who've come up through uni politics and then worked as staffers, then got pre-selection first time round and then settled into long careers, shouting in question time, talking about how politics is tough and you've got to be tough to survive, I sometimes think, well, okay, buddy, let's see you live that life as a woman. Let's see you live Di Lee's life, or Jackie Lambie's, or Anne Arley's, and then let's come back and talk about toughness. Now, just this week, after the Victorian Liberal Party failed in its attempt to win back the federal seat of Dunkley from the government, I read in a national newspaper a searing denunciation from anonymous sources within the party, not of the male candidate who ran unsuccessfully in Dunkley or of the opposition leader, but of the female sitting Liberal MP in the neighbouring seat, Zoe Mackenzie, who after the result published a social media post warmly congratulating the winning Labor candidate. "Zero political judgment," fumed one outraged Liberal contributor to the article. "Naive," said another. "We're at war with Labor. To think this new breed of Liberal thinks otherwise is infuriating." Another asked how the party was supposed to attack this Labor MP at the next election now that a Liberal woman had been foolish enough to be nice to her. Now, I have no way of knowing for sure that these sources, talking to the bloke who wrote the story, were also blokes. I mean, from the anonymity, one might even infer a certain weakness of character, an unwillingness to engage in the robust exchange of ideas that might suggest perhaps they were all female. I mean, it's possible. But seriously, fellas, when your party's just lost a clutch of seats to independent female candidates, a result significantly driven by female voters who got sick of ideological warfare coming before community interest, is an act of courtesy above politics from one of your MPs who didn't lose really your biggest worry? And if there's a merit problem here, could it be you? I would like to end on a positive note by saying, here's to mothers. Whether or not we had the gift of knowing them, I had and have the gift of knowing mine, who's here today, and who's been a huge influence on my life. But not all women have daughters, not all women have children, and not all women have mothers. So here's to the women who went before us, who changed the lives of women regardless. Here's to the ones whose stories we know, but more importantly, here's to the ones whose stories we missed. Let's not continue to make that mistake. Happy International Women's Day.
Men's median annual salary is $11,542 greater than women's, thanks to the Australia Gender Pay Gap. Good morning, I'm Alexis Mackay and I'm the Chair of the Adelaide International Women's Day Breakfast Committee. Today I have two roles. The first is to say thank you to some very special people, and the second is to encourage you to leave this room committed to taking one more step to count her in and change that statistic. Firstly, it's my pleasure to thank our wonderful keynote speaker, the incomparable Annabel Crabb, for accepting Senator Wong and the committee's invitation. We're so pleased to be able to bring homegrown talent home and self-confessed grammar snob, beloved South Australian. Thank you so much for joining us. Senator Wong, 22, I can confirm, 22 years of hosting. Penny, thank you for everything that you do around the world for girls and women. And again, congratulations on becoming the longest serving female cabinet minister in Australian history. What an incredible role model you are. Minister Burney, it was wonderful to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, and it was just beautiful to hear you speak, so thank you for coming. Elaine, thank you again so much for a beautiful welcome to country. It was really a wonderful way to start our morning, so thank you. To our wonderful MC, Sonya Feldhoff, thank you so much for letting us whisk you away from the breakfast show to be with us again this morning. And thank you to our event day volunteers and of course to our wonderful Adelaide International Women's Day volunteer committee. In particular, of course, our executive team, Meredith Boyle and Anne Morgan. I would just like to take a quick moment to amplify the work that the women on our committee do to bring this amazing event to life. Most of the organisation is done out of business hours, after work, after kids are in bed and on weekends. So what a huge effort from all our committee. Thank you for all your dedication and hard work to bring this event to life every year. We continue to be overwhelmed and enormously grateful to our sponsors and those who purchased corporate tables. Last year, we were able to donate $130,000 from this event alone to UN Women Australia, and this couldn't happen without your support. $3,076 of us in the room today. Enormous room full of amazing South Australians who support us every year and who help us sell out in record times. This year we sold out in 20 minutes, 3,000 tickets. So we want to thank you all so much again for your support. Money raised today will go towards supporting programs that enable women across the globe to create a better future for their families, for their communities, and for their own futures. So as we've heard, the theme for 2024 is Count Her In, Invest in Women. And while at the UN there is a lot of focus on the need for better data to inform our response to gender inequality, I think some of the speakers before us agree, it is a call to action for each of us as individuals to take steps to accelerate progress towards equality. Firstly, I want to speak directly to the 33 schools we have in the room and the countless many we have streaming online. You are the future. It's so critically important that your teachers and your fellow students understand now what gender equality is, that it's not a problem that only girls need to solve and sort out. Everyone needs to understand the part they play and that it's never too early to learn to treat everyone equally and fairly. Every person in this room knows that men and women are not equal in this country, nor in any country in the world, regardless of whether you look at economic, political or social indicators. Every person in the room knows that there is no silver bullet when it comes to overcoming the biases and structures that continue to perpetuate inequality. And every person in this room has the power to make change to ensure that today is not the only day of the year where you're actively listening and leaning into the conversation. So my ask of each of you is to take one more step. If you're a senior leader and have access to organisational levers for change, perhaps consider these 3 recommendations. 1, resource roles in your organisations that focus on implementing change at all stages of your employee life cycle. Are you attracting women? Are you hiring processes fit for purpose and free of bias? Are you retaining and promoting women? If not, look at where you're losing them. This takes dedicated resources to identify, implement and maintain energy. Number 2, sponsorship programs. Sponsorship programs that see women advocated for while they're not in the room. What rooms are you in? How can you be actively advocating or sponsoring a woman in your team, organisation or in your life? How can you bring women with you? And number 3, invest in professional development programs that support leaders to be more inclusive. Women don't need more development. Managers need support to become aware of their own biases and how to overcome them. For those of us who think, what can I do? I'm not a senior leader. Sometimes it's the ordinary everyday actions that make an inclusive world a reality. So think about your circle of influence. This might be your team, this might be your community group or your own dinner table, and consider these 3 steps to take one more step. Number 1, challenge unconscious and overt bias every day. Call out those behaviours. We've all been talked over in meetings, and as Annabel said, those green-lit decisions that are made once a man repeats what you have already said in the room. We need to challenge this every day when we observe it. For me, I try to take steps to address this in the way that I manage meetings by ensuring equal balanced airtime and always circling back to ensure anyone that was interrupted can finish their contribution. Number 2, be a role model. Say yes to opportunities. Put in that application when you only meet 60% of the criteria in the job description. Your friends and colleagues and the next generation will be watching you, and role models give others confidence to have a go. I say to my 11-year-old daughter that she should feel the fear and do it anyway, and that's something I try to live by too, most of the time reluctantly. And 3, always amplify the work or achievements of women and challenge the throwaway lines that we all hear, like, women are their own worst enemies. We all need to be each other's cheerleaders. As we've heard the news over social media and today in the speeches, the Workplace Gender Equality Agency released the gender pay gap for medium and large organisations last week. This would frankly have never been contemplated 10 years ago. This step alone demonstrates that we are making progress. So transparency is becoming the norm, and pressure on industries and companies identified as lagging will grow. Transparency is the beginning. It's now time for action. You're all here because you want to see progress in gender equity. So I urge you all to recognise the influence you have and take one more step to count her in and invest in women. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexis. All right, well, you have been very, very patient through the course of a very long set of speeches. Thank you so much for that. We are very much nearing the end. If you haven't already bought your raffle tickets, I encourage you to do so. Please check the list of raffle prizes there on your tables, and you'll see what is up for grabs. All right, they will be available for purchase till 10 a.m. Remember, 11 o'clock is when the raffle will be drawn, and you will find out whether you are a winner. Now, for those of you who would like to have a photo with both Annabel and Penny, I know a lot of you will be keen to do that. They have a very, very small window of time before their next commitment. So I ask you, if you would like to do that, please make your way to the front of the hall to my right, where the International Women's Day banner is, just to my right. They will get a quick photo. We want to get through as many of you as possible, so if you can, please leave the photos, the official photos, to our official wonderful photographer, Jenny Groom. You'll be able to find your photos on our social media sites later today. In the meantime, a special thank you to all the volunteers that have helped out this morning. Also to the Adelaide Convention Centre staff, we much appreciate that. And thank you for attending the 2024 Adelaide International Women's Day Breakfast. Thrilled to be with you with over 3,000 people in the room. Thank you so much for supporting this great event. Although this is the end of the formalities, please feel free to stay, mingle, network. In the meantime, enjoy your day. Happy International Women's Day, and let's see you back here again in 2025. Thank you. I'm Sonya Feldhoff. It's been a great pleasure to be with you again for another year. Thank you.